audience understands, sustainable development goals are also only political movement. It doesn't really comes down to the schools or universities beside the Confucius Institutes, perhaps, or something which is working outwards. And their language does not, there is no word sustainability. In textbooks, curriculum, trainings, etc., 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 they use nature and harmony as a principle. So I believe that using education as a political weapon now, these goals have a big potential to be transformed at the national level of the large dictatorships in the world, transformed using their own language and actually cover up some implementations.
Thanks. Pravina, do you want to rank just one or two of those? We've only got about 5, 6, 7 minutes before 2 o'clock, so 2 or 3 reactions from each of us. And
the first question, which was Mark's, about having a sort of framework or a vision.
Aspirational.
Yes.
yeah,
I think that's fine. And we all have it in our lives. We do it, all of us. But I think, whereas we understand what that aspiration is, that framework is, in these kinds of very global environments, it stays at that level. And the people who are supposed to be implementing it simply don't have the language, the time, to begin to understand what it is that they're supposed to be able to report on, because that's all that that level is interested in order to push. And so I think that unless there's much more, and I think it is happening for the first time, for instance in India this time round, NGOs, etc., and that's again a fairly sort of small strata of society, and government and policymakers and academics are talking about each SDG in turn, looking to see how they can manage it, how they can sort of get it understood and so forth. So I think that unless that aspiration is actually then becomes an active part of the communities that you're going to work with, just leaving it up there as aspiration and just meeting that level of achievement each time is not, for me, good enough. I think you need to have the aspiration, but with it you need to have a really thought through involvement which draws everybody in, so even a child knows what it is, so that, because education is political anyway, wherever you find it. So whether it's, Russia thinking that it's doing a particular kind of thing, so it happens in the UK or in India. We're all working within very political environments. But at least if that politics is understood and engaged with by a greater number, perhaps it becomes more difficult to not get interesting other things coming out of it, which might feed into better possibilities for change.
I think in addition to that, I think one of the things that's, if you go back to what I started with, the 2-page communique from Beijing, the key thing about that communique, for many people reading it, is that there are numbers. There are financial estimates and promises, including for education, in billions of dollars. Without the money is what we've got in the UN. There ain't any money attached to this. And the reason that you're right to use the term dreaming is as I think Li Jun made a presentation last week that I was glad to be at, Li Jun from Hong Kong U, in which I think he argued that we're daydreaming. The cost for the majority of countries of providing secondary education and access to higher education, technical education and education for all, men and women, in countries that have 5% perhaps at the moment. And the global Partnership for Education is only managing to raise some phenomenally small proportion of what it would like to raise in order to do anything about this. So it is, of course, Mark, it is hugely valuable to have some goals. We all, as Pravina says, we need goals to get through the day, don't we? And to get through our lives. To finish our essays, to get our PhDs, the three of you, by a particular time and within budget. But finance is what's missing from this. If you read the NORAD News 54, an article by a very sharp guy called Stephen Cleese, married at University of Maryland, puts his finger on it. This set of goals at the moment is dependent on charity. The contrast with what we heard for the last 2 days is that there are numbers. There are real numbers attached to the Pakistan Economic Corridor, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or to Laos, or to this, or to that. We even have Hinkley Point mentioned in the report from Hinkley Point with a number attached to it in the southwest of England. So I think that for me the contrast is with this fabulously valuable international agenda, which many countries, OECD countries, would find it very easy to agree to because they've got early childhood access in Macron's country. They've got universal secondary education. So there's no big deal saying access to secondary for most of the OECD countries. But you go back to your free thing, free access to secondary in Uganda, free access to higher education. The largest number of higher education institutions now in Uganda, as in Kenya, are private. So the role of the SDGs in relationship to a very powerful report by Oxfam about the 1% economy, about how the real issue today, illustrated in the UK and USA particularly, is the massive and increasing inequality between the rich and the poor. And this doesn't speak much to that agenda. The 1% economy, check out the Oxfam reference to that, and it is extremely worrying. So this is hugely valuable to have this. It's great to have these ambitions and aspirations. But delivering on them is going to cost. It's going to cost. And it's going to cost. It's going to have implications for aid and for national development. So all we've tried to do is lay out a little bit of that agenda, and do drop me a line if you want to pursue it. We're going to
I was just going to also respond to Mark's comment about how, there is this, often Ken, who generally does the speaking and the writing, it's about laying out questions and often not giving the answers necessarily. I mean, you can probably read through them. But I think, actually, I suppose there are not enough questions being asked often. We're just, we accept a bowl of soup and just drink it and then move on to the next thing without really interrogating it. And so, as you know, we are very opinionated people. And so it's quite a difficult approach for us to sort of actually try and lay things out so that the questions are there. So that students particularly, I think students and others, because Often the people who are implementing the stuff don't have the time. I often feel universities that are supposed to be the places where you have time often don't use that time at all. They simply go to meetings, rubber stamp the issues that are on the table. If you ask a question, golly, you get pushed into a corner, or you quietly subvert the system. So that was just a
certainly, Pravina, I was taught by a very highly regarded philosopher of education who taught us that above all you need to love the question.
Yeah, that's
difficult.
Colleagues, I found myself talking too much in introducing Ken, but I did actually want to say something about what you have on your desk in front of you now. NORAG News is something that Ken edits on behalf of NORAG. It is, to be quite honest, maybe the most valuable piece of reading that you'll get out of any journal table of contents which
I
arrives.
didn't pay him to say this, but
which arrives in your mailbox. So when you get from Elsevier or Springer, whatever your table of contents alerts are, and you look through the articles and the abstracts to see what is of interest and of relevance to you, this one is a collection of, on average, how many pieces?
about 50.
About 50. Ken tries to force his authors to respect a one-page limit. People like Mason continually disregard that and give him 4 or 5 pages. But most people are quite good about that. And I suspect also that one reason why Ken travels so much is why any good editor tries to go to conferences to find out who the good people are who can write for you and who the good people are who can review for you. Now, I think that Ken does his own internal reviewing here, but he's certainly finding out who's who in the zoo and who knows what to write for him here. And so somehow Ken and perhaps Michel Carton, who is the another big hand in NORAG, perhaps between the two of them, 3 or 4 of them, they put their heads together and identify what to me surprisingly is always an on-the-money issue. Ken is always on the button in terms of what the key issues are in this field, and then you'll get 50 people from around the world giving you 1 page on it. Much more fun and much more interesting than reading a 20-page journal article on one thing. You can read 50 pages here very quickly, very interestingly, and you will know what's going on in the field. So I want to seriously recommend that you go to the NORAG website, sign up and get the alerts that will get this to you, because it is well worth reading. It gives you just what you need to know in a very, 3 hours is only what it takes to get to 2.5 hours to get through the whole thing. On that note, unpaid advertisement.
Can I put another advertisement?
Another quick advertisement.
There is a special issue in Sustainable Development Goals in the Asia Pacific.
Journal of Education.
No, in the Asia Pacific context, which I co-edited personally. And it has been in the Journal of Sustainability in Higher Education, edited by one of the, chief edited by one of the European, is affiliated with Manchester University now. So the issue just came out in February, and it might coincide with your work as well, with a specific focus on the Asia Pacific, what's happening in the field, what's happening in the field in relation to the goals.
Thanks, Maureen. I think Miraj had a quick advert.
Okay, it's about NORAG. Just from a very practical experience, I worked in UNESCO Bangkok for 2 years. So basically there I came to know about this NORAG news. People really find it very sort of helpful. All of my bosses were always talking about this, and when I was writing, I was looking at this. I actually cited many of your previous works on Tibet because I was involved in Asia Pacific Tibet Review back in 2015, with all this Kuala Lumpur Declaration and thing. So that's really very important, those people who are interested in educational development. Yeah, that's just
thank you.
Ken,
Pravina, can I thank you on behalf of the department, on behalf of the audience? When I discovered that Ken was not too far away in China, I said, why don't you just come via Hong Kong before you head back to Edinburgh. Thank you very much for coming through Hong Kong, for advising us as you have been over the past few days on our thinking, our new masters and other programs in international education, and also for a very, very thought-provoking, as always, presentation. Thank you very much, Pravina. Thank you very much.